Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are looking at something that, well, most of us just categorize as entertainment, but for a specific slice of the population, it's actually a utility.
Right.
It's like electricity or running water. We're talking about music.
Mm-hmm.
But not just, putting on a Spotify playlist and chilling out.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about sound as a truly functional tool for the autistic mind.
It's such a shift in perspective, isn't it?
Totally.
We usually think of music as something we consume, but the source material we're covering today, this comprehensive guide from an organization called HeyASD, it frames it as something you use.
You use it.
It's a key. It can unlock regulation. It bridges communication gaps, and it can turn a chaotic environment into what they call a symphony of opportunities.
A symphony of opportunities. I love that. It sounds poetic, but the guide itself is incredibly practical. It's almost like a cookbook for sound.
It really is.
And we are not just talking about listening to Mozart. We're talking about making chicken in a cup noisemakers.
Which is a real thing,
Yeah.
and we will absolutely get to the physics of that later.
I still can't believe that's a legitimate sensory tool, but okay, we'll get there. Before we start, building instruments out of our trash, we need to lay the groundwork.
Right.
The guide starts with a heavy emphasis on sensory integration. Now, for someone who isn't steeped in occupational therapy terms, what are we actually talking about here? Why does the brain care so much about rhythm?
Okay, so think of the brain as a prediction machine. It's constantly trying to figure out what is going to happen next.
Okay.
For many autistic individuals, the world is just chaotic. It's unpredictable. Lights flicker, cars honk, people speak in sarcasm. It's just a lot of noise.
Sensory overload.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Music, by its very definition, is structure. It has a beat. It has a resolution. So when you introduce rhythm, you're giving the brain a safe, predictable pattern to latch onto.
So it's a safety rail.
It's a perfect safety rail. But, and this is a really big but, not everyone uses that safety rail in the same way. The guide makes this very sharp distinction between two types of sensory profiles.
The seekers and the avoiders.
Yes.
I feel like most people, when they think of autism, they assume avoidance. Like covering your ears when a fire truck goes by.
And that is the sensory avoider profile. For them, their internal volume dial is already turned up to an 11.
Wow.
The hum of a refrigerator might sound like a chainsaw. So for an avoider, we use music to sort of mask that chaos. We use soft, predictable, low-tempo sounds to create a buffer zone.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the seekers? These are the kids or adults who are humming constantly or banging on tables, or they want the music so loud the windows rattle.
Right. And the misconception is that they're misbehaving or just being loud.
Yeah.
In reality, their nervous system is understimulated. They feel untethered. So when a seeker blasts bass-heavy music, that vibration provides proprioceptive feedback.
Proprioception. Okay, unpack that. That's the body awareness sense, right?
Yes. It's your body knowing where it is in space. If you close your eyes, you still know where your hand is. That's proprioception. So high-volume, rhythmic bass literally vibrates the body, providing a kind of physical hug of sound that tells the nervous system, you are here, you are safe. It grounds them.
So when we see a kid making a ton of noise, they might actually be trying to calm themselves down.
Precisely. They're regulating their own system through acoustic input.
That is a huge reframe.
Yeah.
And the guide also mentions that regardless of which side you're on, music acts as a nonverbal communication tool. It activates brain regions for emotion and motor skills at the same time.
It connects the dots. I mean, think about how many people can't remember their credit card number, but they can sing every lyric to a song they haven't heard in 10 years.
A mnemonic device?
It's a hook. The melody carries the information. For an autistic child who might be nonverbal or have limited speech, music offers a way to express emotion without the cognitive load of trying to find words.
It's a direct line.
A direct line to the emotional center of the brain. And if you add movement to that, what they call visual stimming, like watching colors swirl while you dance, it becomes a total system reset.
Okay, so the goal here isn't music appreciation. The goal is emotional regulation.
The goal is to lower the anxiety baseline. That's it. So that learning and connection can actually happen.
Which brings us to the DIY orchestra. This is the part of the guide that I found the most fun, but also, the most accessible. Because let's be real, professional sensory equipment is expensive, but HeyASD is basically saying, go look in your recycling bin.
And there's a specific value in making the instrument yourself. It creates ownership over the sound.
Okay, let's talk about a few of these. They list the classics, like the popsicle stick harmonica.
A classic for a reason. You sandwich a toothpick or a piece of paper between two popsicle sticks and blow. It teaches vibration.
Oh,
You can
man.
feel the buzz in your lips. For a sensory seeker, that tactile buzz is just as important as the noise it makes.
And then there are the tin can drums.
Simple, durable, loud. Perfect for discharging energy.
But we have to address the chicken in a cup. When I read the name, I laughed, but then I looked up how it works, and it's actually kind of genius.
It is. So for anyone listening who hasn't seen this, you take a plastic cup, poke a hole in the bottom, and thread a string through it.
Okay.
You tie a paper clip on the inside so the string stays put. Then, and this is the trick, you take a wet paper towel, pinch the string, and pull down in short jerks.
And it sounds exactly like a chicken.
It's uncanny. It's a friction sound. But why is this in a regulation guide? Because it involves coordination. You have to hold the cup, pinch the string, and pull with just the right amount of tension. It's funny, which breaks tension, but it's also a controlled, repeatable sensory input. You are the master of the chicken sound.
Master of the chicken sound. Put that on a business card.
I mean, it sounds silly, but agency is huge here. Being the one controlling the weird noise is very different from having a weird noise happen to you.
That's a great point. Another one they mentioned that felt a bit more sophisticated was the rainbow xylophone. This isn't just painting a xylophone, it's using different materials.
Yes. This is basically a physics lesson disguised as a craft project. You set up jars or strips of different materials, glass, metal, wood, plastic, and you hit them. The guide uses this to teach timbre.
Timbre is one of those words people nod at but don't really know what it means.
Think of it as the flavor of the sound. A metal spoon hitting a glass jar has a sharp, bright, maybe a yellow sound.
Okay.
A wooden spoon hitting a cardboard box has a dull, thudding, brown sound. Teaching a child to distinguish these sounds, which one is sharp, which one is soft, is teaching auditory discrimination.
So it's helping them filter the noises in their daily life.
Exactly. It builds the filter they need to ignore the distracting noises and focus on the important ones.
Now, if we want to get away from the banging and clucking, the guide suggests nature sound walks. But I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Getting a dysregulated kid out the door, putting on shoes, dealing with the weather, that can be a nightmare. Is it worth it?
It is a hurdle, I get that. But the guide isn't suggesting a huge hike. It's suggesting a shift in attention. You could do this in your backyard, or even just an open window.
So what's the goal?
The exercise is to listen to the silence between the sounds.
That sounds very zen.
It is, but it's active filtering. Instead of the environment just washing over you, you hunt for specifics. Can you hear the wind in that one tree? Can you hear the car way down the street? It turns hearing into an active search, which engages the prefrontal cortex and can actually calm down the emotional centers.
And for the days where going outside is absolutely not happening, they have indoor gamification. Sound eggs caught my eye.
This is such an easy win. You take those plastic Easter eggs or small containers, you fill them with different things, rice, marbles, coins, sand. Then you tape them shut.
And you just have to guess what's inside.
Yes. But think about the sensory difference. Rice makes a soft sound like rain.
Right.
Marbles make a hard, aggressive clack-clack. A sensory avoider might love the rice egg and hate the marble egg. A seeker might want to shake the marbles as hard as possible. It helps you map out their sensory preferences in a really low-stakes game.
I like that. It's data collection for the parent and a game for the kid. Yeah. Now, we've talked a lot about ears.
But the guide makes a big deal about tactile integration, touching the sound. And the hero of this section is bubble wrap.
The humble bubble wrap.
I mean, popping it is satisfying. We all know that. But how does this connect to music or regulation?
It's about rhythm and feedback. If you pop bubbles in time to a song, you're connecting auditory input, the music, with tactile input, the sensation on your fingers, and motor planning, the pinch.
Okay.
But the guide goes further. They suggest walking on it.
Like a runway.
A bubble wrap runway. And this shifts the focus to gross motor skills, the big muscle groups. Walking on an uneven popping surface requires balance. It engages the vestibular system.
Vestibular, that's the inner ear balance stuff.
Right. It tells you if you're upright or tipping over. Yeah. So if a child is walking on bubble wrap, their brain is working overtime to balance, their feet are getting tactile feedback, and their ears are hearing the pop.
It's forcing the brain to integrate everything at once.
It's like a system reboot.
And it sounds exhausting in a good way, like it would burn off that frenetic energy completely. And then on the flip side, you have sensory bins for a quieter tactile experience.
They call these a treasure trove.
Well, imagine a bin filled with dried beans or pasta. You hide things in it. Shakers, bells, toys. The act of digging through that texture provides deep pressure on the hands, which is very calming.
And the sound.
The sound of the beans shifting is a kind of white noise. And the guide mentions using this for vocabulary too. Is the bean smooth? Is the bell cold? It grounds language in a physical sensation, which helps it stick.
Okay, moving on. We've done hands, feet, ears. The guide has a section on whole body regulation, specifically yoga and cooking.
A strange pairing, maybe.
Well, let's start with the yoga. I know yoga for kids is a trend, but is there specific science here for autism?
It's about internal regulation. The guide highlights the Superman, pose feet apart, arms reaching up, and the Wonder Woman, hands on hips.
Okay.
These are expansive postures. Physically opening up the chest can actually lower cortisol levels and increase feelings of confidence.
It's the opposite of the curling up posture we take when we're stressed.
Exactly.
Huh.
And they pair this with breathing. But telling an anxious child to just breathe never works. You need a visual.
The 5-finger starfish meditation.
This is my favorite technique in the whole guide because you can do it anywhere. You hold up one hand like a starfish.
Oh.
With the index finger of the other hand, you trace your fingers.
Okay.
Trace up the thumb inhale, trace down the thumb exhale, up the index finger inhale, down exhale.
So you're watching your hand, feeling your finger trace, and timing your breath all at once.
It occupies the eyes, the skin, and the lungs. It leaves very little processing power left for panic.
That is incredibly practical. Now, the kitchen, the guide calls the kitchen a stage.
Yeah.
I have to be honest, for most parents, the kitchen is a war zone. It's loud, things are burning, the timer is beeping. Suggesting we make it more of a production seems risky.
It does seem counterintuitive, but the argument here is that the kitchen is already an industrial soundscape. You can't make it quiet.
So you lean into it.
Instead of fighting the noise, you choreograph it. Chopping vegetables has a beat. Whisking eggs has a tempo. The whir of the mixer is a drone note. You treat it like a percussion section.
And then there's the texture of the food itself.
Right, the sensory cooking aspect.
Yeah.
Listen to the crunch of this granola bar. Feel the resistance of the cookie dough. It brings the focus to the immediate sensory experience, which stops the brain from spinning out.
And using musical timers.
Turns the torture of waiting into a game. If the timer plays a song, we can dance until the cookies are done. Anticipation becomes active instead of passive.
I can see how that reframes the stress. So, we have all these tools, chickens, starfish, bubble wrap, but how do we actually thread this into a Tuesday afternoon? The guide talks about transitions.
Transitions are the friction points. Stopping play to go to dinner, putting on shoes to leave.
Yeah.
This is where meltdowns happen because the brain has to shift gears so rapidly.
And music acts as the clutch.
That's a perfect analogy. If you have a specific cleanup song, you don't even have to give a verbal command. You just play the song. The auditory cortex recognizes the pattern and signals the body, oh, we are cleaning up now.
It bypasses the argument?
It totally bypasses the part of the brain that wants to argue. And for background music, instrumental tracks for homework, the guide is very clear. No lyrics for focus.
Because the brain tries to decode the words automatically.
Yes. Instrumental music provides a flow state. Lyrics are a conversation you're trying to ignore. But for chores, upbeat, lyrical music, it changes the emotional tone of scrubbing the floor from drudgery to a dance party.
Now, we need to make a distinction before we close out. We've been talking about all these therapeutic activities you can do at home. But the guide also discusses music therapy with a capital T. This is a profession. Why would someone pay for a music therapist if they can just buy a kazoo?
That is a great question. A music therapist is a clinician. They aren't just jamming. They're assessing specific neurological and emotional goals.
Give me an example.
Social interaction. At home, you can drum alone. In a music therapy group, you have to wait for your solo. You have to listen to what the person next to you is playing and match their volume. That is high-level social skills, training turn-taking, empathy, cooperation, disguised as band practice.
And I imagine it helps with that fear of noise we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. It's controlled exposure. If a child is terrified of loud sounds, a therapist can help them slowly, safely create loud sounds. It teaches the brain, I caused this sound, so it can't hurt me. It builds agency.
That makes a lot of sense. It's the difference between self-medicating and seeing a doctor.
Right. Both have their place. The DIY stuff is for daily maintenance and connection. The therapy is for specific developmental hurdles.
We've covered a massive amount of ground here, and I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we really need to stop looking at noise as the enemy.
Or it's just clutter.
Right.
Well,
It's material. We can shape it.
If we look at the big picture, this is all about harmonizing the senses. Whether you're doing the starfish breath or stomping on bubble wrap, you're trying to create a match between the inside world and the outside world.
And that leads us to the final thought I want to leave everyone with. The source material dropped a heavy line. They called music a fundamental spiritual need.
Not a hobby, a need.
Which feels true. So here's the challenge for you listening. Look at your environment right now, not just what you see, but what you hear. Is your environment shouting at you? Is it humming? And if you or the people you care for are feeling out of sync, what tool can you reach for? Maybe it's a playlist. Maybe it's a breathing exercise. Or maybe
it's a chicken in a cup.
Maybe it's the chicken. Thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.